All right, Rabbi, so we'll start with the Maisa. Asher, Lalein is such a terrible Maisa, this one. You should never know of such a Maisa. It's a terrible Maisa. The Maisa goes like this, Eli. Okay, here's the Maisa. A young couple, they get married, Baruch Hashem, they come to Eretz Yisrael, beautiful. It's Gavaldik, so far so good. So far so good. Okay? And the first Shabbos that they decide they're going to make a Shabbos at home, nicely, she's going to cook all the food, it's going to be a beautiful, nice meal, Shabbos Suda together. Gavaldik. So he says to his wife, my dear wife, you're going to sit down, I'm going to serve the meal. I'm going to serve the meal. I'm going to do what I can, you're going to say, relax, I'm going to serve the meal. So everything's going Gavaldik when it comes to the salmon and the fish, whatever it is. And then he comes up to the soup. So the guy walks in to the dining room with the soup. His wife goes white. And he's like, whoa, what did I do wrong? Here I am thinking I'm helping. It looks like I've done something terrible. She says, yes, you brought in the cholent, not the soup. Now we're stuck. What are we going to eat tomorrow? So now, that's the problem. So he wants to know, and I guess it depends on what yeshiva he went to, whether or not he'll be able to answer the shaila. Is he allowed to put back the soup, the cholent back, and replace it with the soup? That's the shaila. Azar, are you with me on the shaila? Simple shaila. Simple shaila. Negated today's halacha, and that is the shailas of Chazara. Rabbi said today we're going to start Be'ezras Hashem, the shailas of Chazara that are Nageya Kamat to most people every single Shabbos Kodesh. It's Nageya, people not only leave things on before Shabbos, not only do Nesina Lachatchela we spoke about yesterday, which is putting something there for the very first time, heating something up. Here we're talking about replacing food that was on the fire, on the black, whatever it was, on Shabbos. I took it off and I want to put it back on. Ma'asim b'chol Shabbos, right? For example, there's a minhag in many people in Klal Yisrael to eat shul Friday night. Aaron, you heard such a thing? Right? People eat shul Friday night, right? No, that's Gavaldik. That's a Gavaldik Azach. That's Aleinu such a Maisa. So Akaponim. So the question is again, you take the shul off Friday night, you want to put it back on. What do? You take the chicken soup off. To give the kids maybe early, you want to give them some chicken soup early because they want to go to bed, whatever. You want to put it back on for the meal. The shalis you could dream up yourself. This is the basic idea. That's what we want to discuss. B'siyatu d'shmaya over here. Lemaisa, the makor for the shaila is be'etzem a Gemara. It's a Mishnah in Shabbos Lamed Vav. Let me just read to you just one line of the Mishnah. Where the Mishnah says, Lamed Vav and base, Beishama Yoimim, Noitlin avaloi machzirin. You can take but don't return. Or Beisilul Oimim af machzirim. Zug Rashi. What does it mean, Loi machzirim? B'Shabbos the machzi kemavashal. So Rashi already explains to us what is the problem with taking something that was on the fire. It's fully cooked. It's hot. There's no bishul over here. We're not dealing with bishul. Whereas we're talking about something that's fully cooked, we're talking about something, whether it's a liquid or a solid, is irrelevant because it's boiling hot. I took it off the fire for a moment, I want to replace it and put it back on. There's no shaila or bishul. Zug Rashi, you know what the problem is? The problem is, machzi kemavashal. It looks like you're cooking, meaning that to the onlooker, or maybe even to yourself sometimes, if you're taking a pot of chicken soup and you're putting it on the fire, obviously with the black, which we'll discuss, or you're putting it on the hot plate, Zugwashi, that looks like a Maisa Bishul. Could be it's not, and we know that it's not because it's fully cooked and it's boiling hot. But it looks like Bishul. Therefore, Zugwashi, the problem with Chazara is Machsi Kamavashal. There is another pshat as well. Tosfos has a different mahalach. Tosfos says the reason why Chazara is problematic is not like Rashi, because it's Machsi Kamavashal. Rather, Zuk Tosfos, the problem is Shemi Yachata, what we explained yesterday, and we've been explaining in Hilchos Shehiyah. Zuk Tosfos, the problem is Shemi Yachata, which means what, David? That means when I take the chicken soup and I put it on the fire, maybe I want it to be extra hot, to real bubble, to cook up, whatever. So Mamela, I'm going to Shemi Yachata, right? Which nowadays could be negated to electric things, could be negated to gas stoves, and all these things. Okay, so we have over here two reasons, Charia, why you're not allowed to do Chazara on Shabbos. In a minute, we will talk about, Ben, the nafkamina between the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim. Big nafkaminas be'ezras Hashem, which we're going to discuss. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we've got an olim over here. This is Gavaldik. I got my... Okay, I hear. Fine. But we have Kenai Nahora, a ganze olim over here that we're almost like a 50-50 over here. I'm almost outnumbered. No? Can I know? All right, so let's go. So the Maisa like this. We have two reasons why Chazara is asa. Number one, like Rashi said, because it looks like you're cooking. And number two, like Tosfos told us, is a Shema Yachata. You may come to stoke the coals in that case. Now, if that's true, the Gemara tells us like this. Gemara in Shabbos Lamed Chesam Beis, where the Gemara says that there are certain conditions that you can do, and if you do those conditions, then it's not a problem. Now, I want to be very, very clear, by the way. We have this many times in halacha, right? Many times in halacha, it's asa. Oh, but the mice, if you do this, then it's mutter. It's not the pshat, Aaron, that it's a loophole. Chas v'shalom. It's not pshat, we found the loophole. And that's basically the job of every good rabbi, is to find a loophole in whatever he can, right? And then that makes him a good rabbi. The greater the loopholes, that's the better it is. I told over the mice once, right? I'm sure I said over the mice once, no? I did, I said it over before. At least once, right? Shimon, you know the mice, right? I've had the Shimon as the mice. I'll say it again. Chazara is ha'maisa. This is Gavaldig ha'maisa, this one. I've told it before, but I'm going to say, the minute I'm going to start, everyone's going to be like, that one, The kids to the mice goes like this. I told it recently. There was a rabbi in an out-of-town place, and he got hired, and they're all excited, the community was excited with him. They finally, they finally hired him, they got the right person, it was Gavaldik, they're all excited, he gives great drasha, big Talmud Chacham, amazing person. They are so excited with their new rabbi. One day, he gets a letter in the post, he gets a letter in the mail, and it's, I'm really sorry, but your job has been terminated, you've been fired. He couldn't believe it. I'm doing such a great job. They tell me I'm doing a great job. They're all happy with me. I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. I'm doing what I'm hired for. What's the pshat? What do they want from me? Why are they firing me? He calls in the main guy, executive director, whatever it is, the treasurer or the president of the shul. He says, what did I do wrong? He says, I'll be honest with you, I'll tell you what happened. What happened was like this. Normally, this is an out-of-town place. People go to bed here very early. There was a chasna in town recently, and people went to bed very, very late. Because of the chasna, they stayed till the end. There was someone very, prominent in the community. You were there yourself, whatever. By the time they came home, it was 2:30 in the morning. Most people have never seen that hour of the day. 2:30 in the morning, they came back. It was like a big bus, whatever it was. And they went past the rabbi's house. And when they went past the rabbi's house, they couldn't believe it. The light was on. And they said, something's wrong. If the light is on in the rabbi's house, there's something going on. We got to check it out. So they stopped the bus, and one person was designated to go out and to see what's going on. Was everything okay? Maybe we can help him. Maybe something's the matter. So they go over to the rabbi's house, and it was the rabbi's study that was on. And they peered in through the window on the outside of the house to see what was going on. And they saw this rabbi with piles of sforim, and he's poring over his sforim, writing notes and everything. They said, this is ridiculous. We want a rabbi that knows everything. We don't want a rabbi that has to stay up to 2:30 in the morning trying to figure things out. Okay? Akapanim Rabbi Sai, the Gemara over here is not telling us loopholes. The Gemara is telling us that this. Those of you that know Chazara, it's the same idea with the 3 Tanoim as well. Basically like this. If the whole reason, as we explained, the Fishitas Rashi and Tosfos, is that either it looks like cooking or Shema Yachata, that only applies when the chashash is there. When there's a real chashash that might happen. But if you take away the chashash, if we make a situation that there will be no chashash, number one, Shema Yachata, number two, of Mechzika Babashal, it's mutter. It's not pshat, it's a loophole. Pshat is the gzeir of Chazal, which is Chazara, doesn't exist when you have these tanoim. Aaron, are you with me? Good? Okay. So let's talk about the 5 conditions, and we'll talk about the nafka b'nitin Ashkenazim and Sfaradim be'izah Hashem. The 5 conditions go like this. These are very, very important conditions. Remember these for the rest of your life. Okay? Some of them on a gear to Bishul, and some of them on a gear to Chazara, which is what we're discussing. We put them all together. Like I told you yesterday, you're not going to find, as far as I know, the 5 conditions written down, simple in Shulchan Aruch. It tells you, condition number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's put together from Simon Yitches and Simon Reish Gimel over here, see base, which is Nogea our Sugu, which is Chazar. Okay, Dovi, you with me? 5 conditions. Condition number 1 is very, very simple. Again, we'll talk about the nafkamit and Ashkenazim and Sfarim. Condition number 1 is daitei lachsa. That means you have to have kavanah, you have to have das, whatever that means, we'll get to put it back. Condition number 2 is oidu biyadai. It has to still be in your hand. We will discuss and define what that means. That's condition number 2. Condition number 3, it has to be Eish Garva Cotton, that means there has to be a blech. Okay, we've mostly discussed that. Condition number 4 has to be Mavusha called Soka. Condition number 5, it has to be hot. The last two conditions, fully cooked and hot, are conditions legabi hilchas bishul, right? Because obviously you can't put a soup back if it's cooled down. Either according to Sfardim, it's cooled down 45, which means it's on the outside of this point, or according to Ashkenazim, it's cooled down to the level that nobody would serve it and drink it that way, because it's really, really lukewarm. But whatever it is, that's a bishul shaila. So in other words, the two last conditions, right? Are you with me? The two last conditions, okay, are bishul conditions. Hot and fully cooked on a gate to bishul. The first three on a gate to chazara, which are number one, das, to put it back, number two, oide biyodoi, and number three, gar for kotem, it means there's a blech. When you have all these three conditions, you can do chazara, right? Why? Because number one, it no longer looks like you're going to be cooking, and number two, there's no chashash shema yachata. Let's go through them one by one, and that is that. The first halacha is daito lachsa. That means to have kavona to put it back. Number one, lefi the Sfaradim, you don't need it. According to the Sfardim, there's no halacha. It's put down Shulchan Aruch. It's a Rambam learning a Gemara. It's a shayla in the Gemara that's not answered. You shall me a Rambam. And again, halacha and Shulchan Aruch and Rishon and Gimel Si base paskins that Sfardim do not require daito lachsa. That means according to Sfardim, there's no problem to take it off and put it back on without any kavana whatsoever. That's good. According to Ashkenazim, you have to have kavana. You have to have kavana when you took it off that you are going to be replacing it, that you're going to be returning it to where it came from in that case. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger has a kash in the Be'alocha. Rav Shach has a whole shtickle on this in Avi Ezra al Rambam. The Rabbi Akiva Eiger has a kasha. Does that mean you have to have actual kavana to return it? Or is it sufficient just not to have intention not to return it? Hello? Is anybody with me? No. Again, Rabbi Akiva Eiger Rabbi Isai, early in the morning, Rabbi Akiva Eiger has a kasha. Is it the pshat that I have to have das? Hareini muchen muzuman. Here I go. Gartel is on. Hareini muchen muzuman. I'm going to return this. Is that what I need? Or is it the pshat that all I need is that I'm not going to not return it? In other words, is it a positive das that you have to have, or is it just like a default that I'm not going to do anything else with it? That's the shaila. So the Maisa, Rabbi Akiva Eiger wants to say, as long as you didn't have intention not to return it, then you can return it. It doesn't have to be that you have to have kavana lemaisa, which means that according to Rabbi Akiva Eiger, if you take, according to Sfardim it's not okay, but according to Ashkenazim, when you take off the pot, as long as you didn't have kavana, that I'm not putting this back on. As long as you didn't have negative das, then automatically you can put it back on. Now, I spoke to a Gavaldige Yid, Rabbi Grossman, the Bala Machaba, Shaiz and Shuvas, the Rashta V'Chakarta. So he told me that he heard from Dain Fisher's that Salah Gavaldige Zach. Listen to this, it's a Moedike Kula, and remember this when you get married. Dain Fisher held that all you need to do is once a year, you get up and you say, Hareini muchen muzuman, I am ready. Then every time I take a pot off the fire, I have kavanah to return it. You say it once a year, that's good enough. Azay Dain Fisher paskin halacha lemaisa. Once a year is good enough. Based on Akiva Eiger, based on whatever. As I Dain Fisher, that's what he told me he heard from Dain Fisher, that once a year you get up and you say, Atzeh, always it's going to be that way. What's that? Again? An Obayos. Okay, ich weiß nicht. Excellent. As I Dain Fisher, Lamaisa, Paskin in that case over there. Now, Nafkamina will be like this. What happens if a person takes the children off the fire, and then he says, you know something, I wasn't intending on putting it back on, but I didn't think I needed it. All of a sudden the kids are like, you know what, maybe for Shalashidis I want to eat some chulent. Can you put it back on? Right? So the shaila is here, can you change your mind? Meaning when you took off the chulent, your das was to leave it. No, I don't need it anymore. I don't need it. But then I changed my mind and I decided, you know, actually, I do need it. So the Mishabura talks about this halacha and Ba'isa and Reish and Gimel Sikot Numvov, and the Mishabura says, it's no problem. Mishabura says if you change your mind, there's no problem. That's ki'ilu daito lachsa, as long as obviously the other conditions are there, which we will discuss at this moment of time. Let's move on, Rabbi Isai. Well, let's move on. Oida biyada, condition number 2. Condition number 2 is oida biyada. It means it has to still be a hand, according to the Sfaradim. as long as it's not on the floor, mamish, which we'll get to, there's no halacha that it has to be oida biyada. It's put down in the Ramah. Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring it down. The reason because the Rambam, the Yerushalmi, with the Gemara doesn't answer the kasha, whatever. According to Sfarim, you don't have to have it still in your hand. But according to Ashkenazim, you do. According to Ashkenazim, when you take something off the, this is what people don't know these things. People don't know when you take the children off the crock pot or you take it off the hot plate, you want to scoop something out because if you remember, we learned at Hilchos Bishul, there's a famous Shittas HaKolboy from one of the Rishonim. The Kolboy says that if you scoop children out of the pot while it's alo eish, even if it's mavusha called sorkoi, it's a shayla v'chiv chatas and issa daraisa. As I stated in the Kolboy, one of the Rishonim, right? They say brings some information on Gimel, Shin Yud Ches, which means that according to that, to scoop it while it's on the fire, according to Kolboy, is a chashash daraisa, even if it's fully cooked. So I want to take it off the fire, take the crock pot out, put it on the counter, scoop some out for the kids, put it back on, right? What do? So according to the Ramah, according to Ashkenazim, it has to be oida biyadai. Has to still be in your hand the whole time. And again, the idea is that when something is still in your hand the whole time and then you return it back to the fire, that doesn't look like a maisa of bishul. That does not mechsi kemavashal. There's no shami yachata in that case because of the black, which we'll get to. Which means I've covered all problems of Rashi and Tosfos, and therefore there's no problem of doing Chazara. Reuven, are you with me? Clear? Excellent. Which means it's got to be in your hand. So what does it mean in your hand? Give me the definition of in your hand. So they asked Rav Shammai Gross, the Heilige Bel Zadayin, in Shevet HaKaras, he brings down the shaila. What about if you're holding the lid? Is that good enough? I don't have to hold the pot. I hold the lid. Does that work, Aaron? What do you say? Good enough. Azariah says no. Look at his face. He's like, anybody else?
Yeah, I say yes.
You say yes. Yeah. He was funny. It's not a gay. That's why you get to choose. Anybody else?
I say you have to know.
Oh, Shimon says you have to know. That is true. You do have to know. That is true. If you know, you know, right? That's how it goes. The Maisa, the bells are dying. Paskins halacha and Maisa that it does not work. It's not good enough. Holding the lid is not called holding the pot because people hold the lid down. That doesn't show you're going to return the item. But if you hold the pot itself, that's good enough. So Rav Moshe asks the kasha. Nigros Moshe and Chelek Dalet, and he asks in Seminayin Dalet, Scott and Lamed Vav, I think it is. Rav Moshe says very clearly. Rav Moshe says, does it have to be? Again, it comes from a Rambam. It's a Stephen the Rambam, Perish Mishnayis, a ganze Zach. And Rav Moshe says, does it mean I have to hold the pot the whole time? So let's give an example. If we're allowed to use maybe we'll use this. This is better. I'm going to use the safer. Let's say this is the pot. What does it mean, oida biyadai? Does that mean I have to hold the pot in the air the entire time and scoop it out? Or can it be resting on the counter at least to make it easier? Sometimes it's a very heavy pot. What do I do? So Moshe says that it could be totally resting on the pot. Now, Rav Elyashiv Lemaitza Paskand, as I Paskand, Rabbi Zil Obach told me that Ishver Rav Elyashiv held that it has to be chetzi on and chetzi off. It has to be on and like if it will fall, or let's say half, sort of slanted on. So if you let go, it's going to fall. Like in other words, your mum is holding it. Not stam, you're holding onto it. You're holding it up. As I Paskand Rav Elyashiv. Reminds me of Moshe, and this is how I'm knowing as well. Is it can be fully on the counter. That's fine. As long as you've got your hand on one of the handles or one of the sides, it's okay. Even though Lemaisa doesn't really need your hand, you're not holding it up, but you're still holding on to it. Kol Zman, you're holding on to it. That's ki'ilu, like there's no hesach hadas, so to speak, from taking it off. Therefore, when you put it back on, you're simply returning something. There's no mersi k'mavashal in that case over there, and that's why it's important over there. The exception over here would be if you put the pot on the floor. Right? This is Mefresh Gemara. This is Lagabe Karka. If you put it on the floor, by the way, Echabet Sorech in whether nowadays Karka has a din of Chazal's Karka, because Chazal Karka, when the Gemara talks about putting on the Karka, that's what they used to do. That was a Hesach Hadas that shows I don't want to use this pot anymore. I don't know how many people in our kitchens will put something on the floor, al manas, to leave it there. If you put it on the floor, maybe it's because you want to serve the chicken soup in the sukkah, and you don't want to chas v'shalom, like the Mishnah Berurah says, to bring a pot of soup into the sukkah. You avada don't want to do. So right before you enter the sukkah, you put it down on the floor, and you serve it that way. This way, you're not bringing the pot into the actual sukkah itself, right? But avada, your das is not to leave it over there. You want to put it back into the kitchen or something like that. Avada, we're not going to be change anything that Chazal told us. Chazal said that Gabe Karka is called the Hesach Hadas, and therefore, if you put it on the Karka, if you put it on the floor, that shows you have no kavanah whatsoever of ever returning it in that case, and therefore, Mamela, you put it on the floor, it's all over. Putting it on the fridge, in the fridge, according to most poskim, even if it's boiling hot, even if it's oida biyadai, even if it's daita lachsa, according to most poskim, putting in the fridge is like putting it on the karka. Because most people put a pot in the fridge, al manas, to leave it over there. So therefore, if you put a pot of boiling hot soup or anything in the fridge, and then while you're holding on to it, you're like, hold on a minute, no, I want to use the shalashidus. Let's put it back on the hot plate. the halacha would be that upashtus be asa, unless there's a tzorech gadol. And the reason for that is because putting it in the fridge is ki'ilu, like Chazal's days of putting it on the karka. Putting it on the shayish, on the counter in your kitchen, is already subject to a whole shaila. It's interesting how Rav Elyashiv understood it to being kol mechuber lekarka kikarka domi. Adin tumah v'tayra mimela. So Rav Elyashiv, you put on the counter, it's got in of the karka, which is interesting because it's nothing to do with that. It's to do with hesach hadas, nothing to do with whether or not it's mechuber lekarka and dini tumah v'tayra v'chole v'chole. But Akoponim, many of the poskim hold. Rav Moshe brings it in Igros Moshe, Rav Shlomo Zalman as well, and they say that avada, a person should not place a pot on the counter and let go of it. But since our counters are used for serving, and it's a normal thing to put it on the counter, put it back on the hot plate, people do these things, then maybe you can't look at it as leaving it on the karka. Maybe if you put it on the counter, lechatchela, don't. But if you did and you were not holding on to it, we're talking about not holding on to it, then avada, you can still put it in back on the hot plate, providing that all the other conditions are there. Then you'll be able to put it back, even though you let go of it on the counter. In that case, giving it to somebody else, by the way, is considered oida biyadai. That means if I want to give the shon to somebody else and let him continue holding on to it, that is considered to be oida biyadai in that case. The last condition for today is of gorfa kotim, which means that the fire is covered. That means there's a blech. So far we have three conditions. Number one, daito lachsa, you had kavana when you took it off to put it back on. Number two, oida biyada is still in your hand. Number three, there's a blech. And number four and number five are very simple, which is for hilchos bishul. That means it has to be hot. That means either it's a liquid that's hot to the shear of yad soledes boy, according to Svardim, according to Ashkenazim, nice and warm, and it has to be mavushal called soiker to put it back. Mitzvah Shem, tomorrow we'll continue with the next shailas.